first 100,000 is the hardest to achieve. We all heard it. It's a famous quote from Warren Buffett's companion here, Charlie Munger, rest in peace. He made this quote back in 1999. Is it still valid today? Let's talk a bit around it. Let's use an inflation calculator to see what 100,000 in 1999 would be today. And then also take a look at real wages to reason, all right, has the difficulty level actually changed, and what would be the impact of achieving this milestone? And then in the end, I'm going to use a personal example, share the growth portfolio, show you how size really matters in this case, but what size do you need to get to? We will talk about this as well. It will be very dependent on location. I give you this hint. So the famous quote here, the first 100,000 is the hardest. So it came in 1999 here on one of the annual meetings here for Berkshire Hathaway. Let's just do the prudent thing and plug this into an inflation calculator. So 100,000 back then, obviously 100,000. But how much would you need today to have the same purchasing power? Roughly $200,000. So the actual impact in terms purely of purchasing power of reaching this milestone has halved. We all have seen the memes about being able to buy a property back in the 80s with the cash you had in your wallet. Well, it comes from this money. It's just becoming less and less worth over time. A lot of people have noticed this, especially in current times where we had a lot of inflation. Very, very recent, lots of inflation that was going on. Let's compare this to the wages. What has happened to wages in terms of real wages? I found a graph. We can look from roughly where the mouse is now, 1999. And we can see that in terms of real purchasing power, wages for most of us have been roughly stagnant. It's a different story if you're in the top 1%. It's very popular with stock compensation for higher level executives that has really boosted the total value of earnings in many cases. Whereas for most of us, wages have become roughly stagnant. So what does these numbers mean, and how does it impact this famous quote from Charlie Munger? Well, we can see that the impact of reaching $100,000 today is roughly half that of what it was back in 1999. So way less impact. However, the difficulty of actually getting there to the 100K is still roughly the same. The real wages hasn't increased by that much. It's still difficult for a person just starting out to actually have the money left over after all the bills are paid to save and invest and get to that $100,000. So the difficulty level for most of us to get there has not changed by that much, although the impact in terms of where this puts you, for financial security has been greatly reduced. And the good thing, though, is that if you have a system in place that allowed you to get to $100,000, then you're very likely to get very wealthy in life, because wealth is just a system. You have it in place. Your spending does not exceed your income, and you're able to have a system in place for yourself to actually generate the wealth. So that's the good news. And also the next $100,000 to get to those 200K to have the same level of financial stability, it's going to be a lot easier, because the money that you have invested does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. I will show you a personal example here very, very soon. And For the first 100K, just some general statistics, it will be roughly 80K that comes from your own blood, sweat, and tears, your hard labor, and then 20K in gains. But this will only be more and more of the value increase, in your net worth that's coming from capital gains later on. And being an owner is truly amazing. Trust me on this. Owning is so much more worth than actually working. It's just ridiculous. Let's do a quick example here. So the average salary in Sweden, the country where I come from, is roughly 417,000 Swedish krona, so 37,000 euro here. So that's what a Swede earns in a year, and then of course this will be taxed highly as well. They have 50% tax for higher income earners. It's just ridiculous, and it's progressive, but a large part of this will be taken in taxes. So net, you have less. Now, being a capital owner, I've saved diligently, built that 100,000, and doing it again now on a different portfolio just to see how hard it actually is. But the growth portfolio today, 6.4 million Swedish almost, and year to date from this 5.45% gain, we can see an increase in total value of 330,000 Swedish krona. So roughly divide by 10 to get into dollars. So, just the start of the year, it's the 10th of January now. We've been 10 days into 2026, and just being an asset owner has almost generated an entire average salary gross in Sweden, and certainly an average salary if we look at net. That's after taxes in this case. And this is relevant for you as an example. If you have $100,000 and you get the average return on the stock market outside of the US has 11 something, outside we have 8%, I think it's 8.4 in Sweden, something like this. Does that actually make a meaningful difference in your life in terms of financial security, in terms of having real purchasing power? Can you cover your rent with this money? Yes or no? If you asked yourself this question on $100,000 back in 1999, it would surely have a lot greater impact than having the same amount of money today. We saw this. You need $200,000 to have the same purchasing power. So we see this financial security, as mentioned earlier, is gone way, way down. The only good part is that, all right, you have a fantastic system in place that allows you to build wealth. And you can take a look at your own portfolio. Just do this calculation, 8%, see, would it make any difference for you? Back in 1999, let's say you have a 10% return here, you get $10,000 from this. That would be a significant impact for most people back then. We can compare it to having $20,000 extra every year from needing $200,000 today. And I think that number would have a significant impact for most of us in America. Not as much if you live in the large cities, New York, LA, these places, but in the rest of America, I think it would be a lot more impactful. Here in the European Union, an extra $20,000 every year would certainly be very impactful. And if you do this calculation from Southeast Asia, somewhere like Thailand or Vietnam, well, then you're very likely to be able to actually retire off this as a single guy with modest consumption. So the impact of that $100,000 is very, very different around the world. It's diminished a lot since Charlie Munger first quoted it, and I think it's important to talk about that it's less of an achievement today, because I see a lot of these AI videos on YouTube talking about finance topics and discussing how, all right, $100,000, it's the hardest, but once you get there, it's a huge milestone. And it's regurgitating a lot of finance literature from back in the day. It's not as impressive today. You need roughly $200,000 to have the same level of security, the same, this translates into real world help with your bills and being able to cover a lot of your daily spending, basically, should you so wish. It's very hard to go wrong today with $200,000 in the bank account. The same as it was very hard to go wrong with $100,000 in your bank account back in 1999, when Charlie Munger first quoted this famous quote here. Alright, that's been it for this video, talking a bit about the first $100,000, if it's still as hard today, and I hope you found the answer to be both educational and entertaining. And as always, hope you guys make a ton of money, whatever investments you decide to make. Take care now. Bye bye.